모두 규제된 바다 제 모든 바보서나 대저 제 이쪽으로 가자. 답반도 찾아왜 저 교행 도로로 저는 도도는 그저 저로 가서 그러면도 라빠도로 가서 저마다 봐야 돼요. 그들라야 산사로 도저저저들로 바바바들 비려고 Mahamudra Bodhicitta Rong Gojilo Manavago Wande Omi Chuji Yapona Dago Panjaka Yung Wanyara Sego Budhicitta Lami Yarazo Wande Soto Namachara Chukin Chi Yapone Bonchi Vajila Jito Banjada Dachino Bamba Chukin the God So Tana Trichro Tangela Samba Hingi 삼바는 hingi, 삼바가 제비 hingi지. 기계들 삼바, 기계들 삼바지. 삼바 세미가 공겨. 이 삼바가 제비 hingi시바지. 그래서 제가 삼hin기지 이거는 인피지 주토 맞게 나스. 인피가 주토 주세 봐더니 무슨 주사가 양선이도 까미는 이나도 봐 내리. 이나도 봐도 첫 노르는 난 유무가 족이고 차리요리. 그리 서사로 사실 깔미는 상hin기를 하주라고나 약간 라기가 파시 쪽 라기가 창이 되어요. 유무바도 이거 파시 쪽이야. 옛날에 파시 쪽들이 야세라는 소리는 나서 속마니 대다워도 줄을 찌나 근데 취직에서 강제장 나는 이기면 자주 제장하는데 파시는 나고 줄을 사적세구나. Terus malari besong, cerita farsi tu religius itu sih lemah boleh je, ya. Malari besong, kang lagi. Sejak soal parol tapi soal orang mes. Oh, maksud soal siapa tu kang soal boleh tu. Sanjung sanjung je soal boleh. Lepas jang siapa tu pajan je, nadi le. Jadi sanjung je raju le, orang sanjung semua domba tu, hujan kita orang tu semni sanjung je macam na. 그냥 이 콕되는다 이 콕이 이봐 쳐버려가 유무바 쪽은 탑top 빠지더니 유무바 탑top 받대 먹대 이 콕은 이봐 줘요래 이 저당 콕을 저당거더니 나디가 또 말까지 차바바바는 주더니 요거요래 오늘 사적 전부 도마한테 톱잖아 이 콕되는 수남 뒤체면 바바 그요 사하다도 지나 사족생랑이 유래구나. 사지에 삼진이 초바야, 대리사바네. sep지에 득종은 대리사바요 말했어. 대리가 상대적으로 랑을, 사람이랑 대리사바요 말했어. 대삼대 가래. 너는 또 상희기에 오늘 sep지에 삼지에다가, 쇼고, 숨고, 강의용, 나다 낭배 팽이 요래서, 고마 탐지가 제어고 들어가지. 어떻게 주제 낭비에 쇼를 팽 거를 가리 핀다 그래. 쇼 통을 왜? 쇼 통이 요절에 빼나 따라봐다 몰라리 받대 삼지에는 통고 요랬대. 나도 따로는 통도 매 내바시 올라. 통도 매대 그 피부에 말이 피고 피부도 이치요 부족 되기요. 가리 이치요. 야. 저도 상인적인 용도 있지나? 뭐 피줄 때와 아메리카라 딱 대인인데 대니 피지 삼년기 싸워 제와는 제와나 뭐지 sem을 가와 토고요라 내가 토고요라 따와 강리 핀시니가 그다 매바게 핀시니가 지 쟁거요라 대신이가 그게 다들 잘못 뜻이 서로 대화요리 대리 시성이 남시대 다지 맞에 봐도 바시 이지스킨 차키요리마도 다디들 다선 코지를 될 찍는 분 잘온다고 왜 잘온 교수는 쳐러와대 상행이 그 페인이 찍당요 말이야 별로 쇼 담지는 또다 가바삼지게 파쇼로 사바단 굉장히 공항번호 제기는 망고 요리 강급 팽거를 제와 제기 팽거를 야 제와 제기 강리 저당부터 재미지고는 야, 이전이 니바 쓴 거고는 다 팽이 오래 찌와. 니바 쭉 강게 랑게 타마니 새끼 탐지를 피고 선로 이게 세미 바지 세미 바지 뭐 가리 소증을 요 소증을 내가 말해 사만 상이죠 사만 피고 새끼 탐지를 피고 선리 요는 제 세미 바래 제 나도 삼부 또 없지 대기 집어 또 없지나 뒷성제 사지에 삼식이 샘 대리 상희지를 피고서는 상희지 했더니 남카다고 차대요. 남카다고 차고 쪽쪽 가지. 걔네들 상희지 빼요. 걔네들 빼요. 그러라. 오늘 걔네들 남카다고 차고 쪽쪽 갈 때는 걔네들 속대가 차대요. 뭐 샘대가 차대요. 봐. 대 차봐도 소소 줘보고 봐. 땅이 땅은 양듯이 이러와. 담보 파만이 들이 돕고 들이 도모니 들이 기기니 들이 작업을 샘 장보거리. 그리고 무서 생보고 다 들이는 문에다 남과 다 독도 받자다 봐 사지 동지가 정말 문에 남게 갖다 새끼 장 눈이 찍다고 말이야 생각 내려오고 만큼 삼아도 내리 생각 내려오고 통은 눈이 찍다고 말이야 뭐라 찍찍찍 눈이 다 독도요 양들이 인사비가 하고 거요래 생포는 같이 네와 우리 눈이 매가래 눈이 매be 내가 다 받아야 요래 디설나 나디들 상희기 효고를 지나 배기고를 소모를 지나 배기고를 야 대필다 빼는다 다음 있으면 말라리가 락셀을 다좀 가와게 삼담소리 야 그리 로마한테 이게 다 말라리가 시성지 그니 소펄 쌍펄 다 코티들이 주바펄들이 말라리가 락셀을 강을 꼭 마셔야 돼 삼산을 꼭 가로에 속방기 요래. 삼산을 꼭한 게, 그냥 롱줄리식 요래, 롱줄리식 요래. 삼산들이 가라야 싸움하고 고도 고자도, 이마 로마상전 최영지. 제 가리는, 뒷값들이 다 가리, 줄이 가리지가 돼. 휘가라 죽으셔도 되는 것이 소풀이 졸, 소방을 해야 돼. 네. 딱 무슨 쇼를 팽개를 해서 사지에게, 은혜 회사를 쇼를 썼다고 팽개도, 나지도 뭐, 야네, 가는 가라도 막 카송세. 문화를 비대도 쏘는 남사는 뭐냐고 걔는 무슨 산인기적 효과를 편히 다 대, 무슨 세말 와서 문화를 비대려고 말와 빼만 보여 빼찍야 다고 생각하면 사진 주고는 사족설을 하고 말이야 야 가리 사진의 생각하면 설득의 주요 말이 사족설부 또 랑기를 차요 오늘 사청생고 또 그랑기 가리 차로 야, 실은 니마 나와 저 차반지 이거 용왕나들랑 차요. 내 당시 사청생고 또 그랑기 쩌박고 혹은 로요리. 삼모 당신은 사지에送것도 용띠 당시 대다 용띠 이제 가리로. 나 이제 삼행기도 소설 요고 요리. 디선들이 다 랑기 율 사청생 삼행기구나. 이봐 랑기가 요거요. 별로 마주를 보지구나. 야, 전도 동담을 세나요 말와. 이봐 세는이 몰라. 야, 너봐 당신이 뭐 추천을 와. 야, 대능이 발시도 상인이 뜻을 랑기가 창구구나. 그런데 창구구나 뜻이 저도 쭉 그요. 내가 저거 말이야. 가리주고 요 말이. 내가 버렸어. 내가 쫓고 그랬어. 아직 갈래잖아. 등인을 독을 좀 넣어요. 지선을 게다 강세나 당 샘진 상태 피고 샘지 그 뜻이 지들 사족성 피 따대는 근데 쪽바 파트니 쪽 란지 차이 거야. 저 보통 생교물 이제 생교리 너가 땅을 놓으면 추천리 이건 너가 땅을 때 랑코로 랑문이 시고를 줘봐리 야 뒤따지 상hin지 랑게 땅명이 생는 누구 요리 쌈띠니 대우는 대상주 뒤식은 지고 요 새끼 당지 파망이면 동동 내려가고 시합리 야 다 뒤나오도 요 쪼리베나 다 강태가 말이야 저 파시 쪽로는 시는 쪼리베나 따라가게 쪼람타지 밤에 쪼람 거 보내더니 먹이와 샘을 밤에 타는 누가 쪼람탐지 됐다고 네 완전히 내 노도 요리 이선은 남이 창조 요리 때는 삼바들 때문에 경기해지 경기에 라린데 그걸 보고 요리 삼바들 샘나오나 별로 무슨 속차 타오는 이제봐도 이제봐도 배샤매 저매 말해. jimba 사중에 jimba 취지 jimba 마직바 jim바지야. 또 차와 줄라. 별로 jimba 총총기 땅나요. 사족서고 뒤태프 그럼 제보로 송을 봐. 나디저 집에 jimba 땅나 세포바kan jimba 땅와자. 이피를 놓친这个 진 전부적 이유지 막 평치에서 그 가게 그 사족서가 또 그 나그 사람도 또 대리지도 또 어때 담지 제기를 편저 안 줘봐 설sem지가 접종 대상이 몇개 같은 싸움을 노로 주지 가래 취지인지 또 없는 사지 생기는 세부지 기발이 다른 뭐라지 송아 남심만 통유시 통시 남심만 통유시 통의 생기 답지 사지 버티지 통大考的也米子，长期神经你一直就把长期装进这个送草了，神经那么长期你，别人咱们人老个讲的有呢，大新闻这个这个老的这把多不多的，咱们人个老的我就把人，要做新闻的确实把人怎么呢？我确实这把多不多的哈好多的，人咱们成为那老通了，长期神经这个神经神经我那个成为那老就话哈好多的，这哈好咱懂咱们这把哈好的。这蛤蟆我可是哪里这个第三了，他上巴等很久一点了，再到个这里，多大的地方黄完了，哪里没法做过，哪里没法做呢？你上海讲做赢了的吧？你就是做那个讲的，别人假设让你草地嘛，这到两年前，真的，这做把拍戏做上一个差用的，你能送把啥子？等说了假设让你落去个有的。절대 내가 말이나 요거 뭐도 왜 딱바닥 가래 뭐서 딱바 야 나가 거기 집을 잡으면 되지 날 가지 따라지는 제도 손을 따다 뭐 피가 새로 찾자는 이다가 망고리 제일 대다 당화도 미나 다들 공소라는데 다 사성 돼 대도 대통령 저기 봤다는 공소만 나와 대 사제 tuk지 추유 대다고 되는 너나 가리 송도 나는 이봐 중대 미기도 가다 나가 뭐 주지 나는데 나는 이봐 강야면 뭐 깨나 제가 포토랑 뭐지 뒤동다 하고 팔시 벽은 타고 줘봐 하고 올라 산족청도는 산족청때 라서나 체험 망보를 쌓아줄 산족청도 그 코를 찍라는 차렸다 어떻게 가려는 산족청도 쎄와라 야 주로는 육진감들이 미직 장사 잡는 론 잡기 조금만 장사 잡대 이마저는 고소는 가가지고라 쎄와 체동차지 다 라면이 다 그러고 어떻게 쎄와 체로 다 담색차 쎄와 체동으로라 디설러들이 자다 컨트롤다 자동을 내 자체취지 컨트롤을 했어 그래서 컨트롤만 하는 나 류지적 깨깨성 류들이 야도 바꾸고 산지게 류들이 뭐요 말 컨트롤랑이 말했지 특대성 대특 동다로 싸움을 싸움을 용기제자 요래 대다도 정달 계속나 다들이 다 쪽으로 다 토바는 야 유무가 레레서 최 대라고 뒤지게 쓴 이 유무바들 같은 다 조달을 바꾸고요 딱 계산을 바꾸고 대는 이제는 들이 산속성 모두들이 쳐서 아직은 떼어서 파존이를 다 유무가 좀 담그고요. 뒤서는더니 삼바다 쪽에 hin기에서 삼hin기에서 그렇게 탑대다더니 조소 인하도마다 저들라리 소비만들이
And so this And so this morning, my Dharma friends, we have talked about loving kindness and compassion. And so we need to cultivate loving kindness and compassion for all sentient beings. And it must be a compassion. Let's see. That was all. See the music. Oh yeah. And so I didn't want to say something again. And so when we cultivate love, it must be a love that is merged with compassion. And then it becomes boundless love and boundless compassion. Otherwise it becomes ordinary. So love must be merged with compassion. They must come as a union. And then we talk about an altruistic mind that, like this horse that runs for the benefit of others. In the Vajrayana, that relates to the 7-limb prayer, which is an antidote, each an antidote to the 6 afflictive emotions. In the context of Pratimoksha and Bodhisattva vehicles, when we cultivate love and compassion, naturally, through having a mind of love, we will naturally practice the 6 paramitas. And also the 6 paramitas are an antidote to the 6 afflictive emotions. As it is explained in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, each of these limbs and also paramitas is explained. And that goes for anything that we do, either in a mundane sense or in a dharma sense. Even in a mundane sense, if you just engage in mundane activities, if you have a mind of love and compassion, whatever you do will become the practice of the 6 paramitas. There are many different explanations to explain the 6 paramitas. Milarepa has put it in brief, and he said, apart from practicing virtue in whatever you do, there is no separate method than that, no separate skillful means than that. So when we talk about gathering accumulations, gathering merit, what is it really that we are gathering? We are gathering loving kindness and compassion. When we talk about purifying obscurations, that just means purifying self-grasping. When we cultivate loving kindness and compassion, and then take the Bodhisattva vow, then we have received the essence of the Bodhisattva vow. If we just read the Bodhisattva vow, but we lack love and compassion, we have not really obtained the benefit of that Bodhisattva vow. And in general, whenever we sleep, actually, there's a fault. There's always a fault, a downfall in sleeping. Because of the 6 afflictive emotions, the ultimate affliction is ignorance. And sleeping is ignorance. So there is a fault in sleeping. And the more we sleep, the more we gather the affliction of ignorance. That continuously falls down into our mind stream like raindrops falling down. However, if we take the Bodhisattva vow and always maintain a continuum of loving kindness and compassion, then even when we are sleeping, we are accumulating merit continuously. And as practitioners of the Vajrayana, we necessarily must give rise to Bodhicitta. And also in the Vajrayana context, it is taught that if you give rise to Bodhicitta, there is no higher offering you can make to the Buddhas. There is no greater purification of obscurations than that. There is no greater blessing than that. So all these great qualities only arise from a mind of love and compassion. When we, as Buddhist practitioners, we are always talking about benefiting beings who have died, who are alive and who have died. And sometimes students ask, how are you benefiting those who have died? Do you see them actually? And in fact, there is some who do see them, like Tilopa or Milarepa, for example. I have to say honestly, I don't really see the one who have died, but still I have great trust that I can benefit those who have deceased. And how can we trust in that? How can we benefit them? If we understand the qualities of love and compassion, we understand how we can actually benefit someone that is far away. For example, if there's 2 people who love each other, one is in America, one is, let's say, in Taiwan, they have love for each other. No matter how far they are apart, when they think of each other, they always are joyful through just thinking of each other. And that is due to the love that they have for each other, the selfless love that they have for each other. So in just one instant that you think of others with love, you have parted from self-grasping. And when one dies, until one has separated from self-grasping, one experiences suffering. So the Bardo consciousness assumes a mental body where they experience great suffering. once we have separated from self-grasping, Buddha nature will reveal itself, and the ice block of self-grasping melts. And in the end, ice also just has the nature of water. So there is no one who cannot be benefited by love and compassion. It benefits anyone, the alive or the dead. We sometimes request some Sangha members to do some prayers for the deceased, for example. And what is the benefit of these actually? The benefit and how they really are benefited by these prayers is if we cultivate love and compassion for them. We talk about boundless love and boundless compassion. And there are 3 ways in which beings are benefited through our aspiration prayer. The first power, and there's 3 powers. So the first power is called the power of your own love. So that is the love that arises in your own heart, your wish to benefit all sentient beings. Such boundless compassion. We talk about boundless compassion for a reason. If it is not boundless, then we feel that love for some but not for others. So not that kind of biased compassion, but compassion for every sentient being. That is the power of your own love, your own compassion. Then the second power on how the aspirations are accomplished is called the power of the love of Tathagatas, of the Buddhas. That is the mind of all the Buddhas of the 3 times, which is vast love and compassion, expansive like space. Like Shinrezik, for example, who is the embodiment of compassion. It is taught Shinrezik pervades all the reaches of space. And it is not Shinrezik's form that pervades, it is his mind of love and compassion that pervades. So he has this all-pervasive quality, and that quality of all-pervasiveness is something that we can and must create for our own mind. And how we create that is just as we said before. You cultivate love, you train, you think about your parents, your friends, your teachers, your country, and so forth. You train your mind. The Buddha said, sentient beings are as limitless as space, and wherever sentient beings pervade, their suffering pervades. All sentient beings suffer. Anyone who has not seen the nature of their mind suffers. Only when we see the nature of the mind, we transcend suffering. And in order to become liberated, therefore, from suffering, we must necessarily see the nature of the mind. And so many of you who have experienced this practice will know what that refers to. And that kind of boundless compassion is something that we must create in our heart, and then it becomes pervasive and can actually reach all sentient beings. So also, when we make our dedication prayers, therefore, for the deceased or alive, it can actually benefit them. And now, if one still does not believe that, there's another story that really shows that, the story of Milarepa. One time, Milarepa was in Lapchi meditating, and it began to snow for 6 months. And the road was cut off by the snow, and nobody could reach him. Milarepa was left alone. And his students thought that he must have died. And because they thought he died, they performed various ceremonies on his behalf. Feast offerings, smoke offerings, and other offerings. And Milarepa did not die. When he was staying in Lapchi for these 6 months, sometimes the Dakinis came and brought him a feast offering. Sometimes he extracted the essence of the wind. Sometimes he had no need for food because he naturally felt filled. And why did he feel that way? When his disciples found him alive, he asked them what they were doing, and they explained to him on certain days they were performing these offerings for Milarepa. And it was exactly on these days where Milarepa felt full and no need for food. So that is the benefit that we receive from making such offerings with love and compassion. So it really shows how a smoke offering, for example, or any other offering made with love really benefits beings. So that time Milarepa said it really shows how that actually is of benefit. And so from these teachings we have learned that actually benefit can be brought to beings in that way. So you can see this story in the life stories of Milarepa. So that is a very good sign of how love and compassion actually benefits beings. And what happened to Milarepa is a real story. Milarepa would not tell us a lie. And then there's many other examples like that. Also, when we talk about the Pure Lands and making offerings to the Buddhas there is no greater offering to make than the offering of Bodhicitta. Because the Pure Land itself was created by Bodhicitta. No one has made it in any other way. It is made by Bodhicitta. And so all the different things that appear in this world, in fact, if we know how to view them correctly, are made by Bodhicitta. All the natural things, for example, the sun and the moon, the clouds and the rain and so forth, are actually all Nirmanakaya manifestations. They are naturally arise, no one has made them, and they bring benefit and happiness to sentient beings. And what is the quality of all that? On the basis, there is love and compassion. And that love and compassion we must cultivate in our own heart. If we cultivate bodhicitta, love and compassion, then all the other perfections, such as generosity, are contained within that mind. For example, a mother who loves her child will not be stingy. Anything that the child needs, the mother will spare any expense. That is generosity. So generosity is the antidote to stinginess. Then the mother would not want to harm her child. That is ethical conduct. So the 6 parameters are exactly contained within just the mind of love and compassion. If we have love and compassion, we will naturally practice the 6 parameters. And so many times we engage in all these practices of the parameters and we do not see any results. And why? Because they always are tainted by self-grasping. For example, we think this is my child or this is my friend. Then we do good things to them, but still we are attached to them. And then through that grasping at a self, a medicine turns into poison. And for that reason, in the very beginning, we always cultivate the correct motivation of bodhicitta, thinking of all sentient beings. Because then, naturally, whatever we do will become a practice of the 6 parameters. Naturally, one will want to give, that is generosity. One will not want to harm if one loves, that is ethical conduct. And even if others harm you, because you love them, you will not get angry at them. So you naturally practice patience. Then you never lose the love for them. You always keep them in your heart. That is meditative concentration. And with mindful awareness, you understand that all sentient beings have been your parents, and you do not let loose of that mindfulness. And that knowing awareness, that is wisdom. But these 5 parameters are of no use if we do not apply diligence. We must be diligent in their practice. Then they become useful. And so diligence is lost when we lose our mindfulness. In all our activities, when we fall into heedless behavior, from heedlessness all non-virtuous conduct arises. Whenever the mind is distracted, our actions of body and speech will become mistaken. So how we can also understand that union of love and compassion. Love is the mind that we must cultivate, and compassion, through compassion we begin to engage in activity. So we love in our heart, and with compassion we act. And for example, when we don't understand that, then one may think that I'm poor and I have nothing to give, so I cannot be generous. But that's actually quite mistaken, because there's different types of generosity. There is the generosity of giving material things. There is the generosity of giving the Dharma. There is the generosity of protecting from fear and so forth. For example, even if you just protect this little animal, or if you just give them a little bit to eat, with bodhicitta already you have accumulated great merit. It is taught that it is more beneficial to offer a spoonful of food to an animal with an altruistic mind than to offer a golden vase with a self-grasping mind. And that is due to the power of bodhicitta. So we had those first two powers. First is the power of your own love. Second is the power of the love of all the Buddhas. And then we come to the third power, which is called the power of Dharmadhatu. And so when we talk about making these offerings and purifying obscurations of all beings, how is that possible? It is possible through the power of Dharmadhatu, because the ground of Buddhas and sentient beings is one. Milarepa said, I do not see consciousness, I see primordial wisdom. All sentient beings actually are Buddhas. That is the view of inseparable samsara and nirvana. Samsara and nirvana have a single ground. Or the Buddha himself said, within all sentient beings is the Buddha. Or for example, it is like the light in this world. Although light manifests in different ways, in the end there's only just one such thing called light. All the light has the same essence. Or the water in the ocean. If you just pick up a finger or drop of water, that drop has the same nature as all the ocean water. It has the nature of water. And so the same is true for your mind. Whenever you see the nature of your mind, you have seen the minds of all the Buddhas and all sentient beings, as there is just one such thing called the mind, the single ground. That is the seeing of the ultimate truth. And why do we not see this? Because we are obscured by self-grasping. And self-grasping can only be overcome if we give rise to a mind of love and compassion. And if self-grasping diminishes through compassion, you will see the actual nature of your mind. In the Vajrayana path, we relate to that when we practice the 7-limb prayer. And in all our activities, we should practice according to the 37 Bodhisattva practices, within which the 6 paramitas are naturally contained and explained. And so the 37 Bodhisattva practices, we must understand the essence of what actually is taught. Even in these practices, for example, when it says, even if someone for whom one has cared as lovingly as one's own child regards one as one's enemy and so forth. So then one begins to think about all those who have caused harm towards one. And if you just have that instruction, then it is sufficient. Then you understand that no matter how much other people harm me, only if I lose my patience, if I get angry at them, then I am lost. Otherwise, I cannot be harmed in any way. So no matter how many people harm me, I shall not get angry. So that is really what we should take from these verses. Or when it says in another verse, when others try to cut off one's head when one is utterly blameless. So what we should take from that is not really just take it literally, but understand that I must not get angry, even if others try to cut off my head. So we must understand the meaning of that, what it ultimately means. It ultimately means that I must practice patience, no matter what harm I will receive from others. And of the 6 paramitas, patience is really the most important aspect. Because if we lose patience, we lose bodhicitta. The bodhicitta we have accumulated throughout countless lifetimes is lost by an instant of anger. Because what is bodhicitta? Bodhicitta is love. And we lose love when we get angry. For example, even in a worldly sense, there's 2 people who get married, maybe 10, 15 years, they're happy together, and then one day they get angry at each other, they lose their love, and they separate, and begin to see each other as enemies. That is also the samaya that we talk about. To lose the samaya means to lose the bond of love. So therefore, there is no greater enemy that we must identify than our hatred and jealousy. That is our worst enemy. So even if someone were to come and take my body, then I would think, in the future I can get a better body. But I must not lose my patience. This body, as the Buddha himself said, has no essence. But if I get angry, that I will bring with me into future lifetimes. So that is the kind of understanding we should take when we read these lines in the 37 practices. When we understand that, we understand what is the essence. What is that horse of altruism running for? The essence is to recognize afflictive emotions as they arise with mindful awareness and overcome them with mindful awareness. Then we will be rewarded like this excellent horse. So that which must be gathered is love, that which must be removed is self-grasping. So the essence of this context of love and compassion that we must take here is that love must be in a union with compassion and must not arise separately from each other. And that is the essence of the 7-limb prayer and also the essence of the 37 Bodhisattva practices.
가시게 싸봐. 당부 밑에 빼마고 니 이게 공공 님마다 고요라. 대답이랑 찍버려도 공부요. 마시나. 이 동시고래 막고 저기 랑집들이 공리게 배노요 말이에요. 네. 사하 동시고 와서 된도 공부 담아라도 송부리. 네. 저쪽지 양만 송네. 나시 라코로 고알지서 하게는 무슨 좋아지. 혼대 추탐지 사지에 거서 공도 맡았다. 소소지 뭐 깨는 건데. 루제기 깨는데. 다 내가 담아서 가는 팽이고 말이야. 혼대 추탐지 사지에 거서 고 떴어 올라해. 야, 죽고 놓고니까 다 고치하래. 죽고지 다 받아 니가 죽고지. 그러는 느끼기가 죽고 자디고. 새끼 담들 들자게 사제다 들지기 새끼요 냠대요래. 그래서 라마 기비시니다 주시에서는 냠대요라. 얘는 진짜 들자게 새끼 담지라 들지기 가다니 발라. 때서 따랑 무시만 제발 찌빠다고 그러래. 이제들 지금 못 저래. 산지 추죽거리 이동지 찌빠차지 뒤치고래. 얘는 선우지 직디 장미발에 남주지 새끼 장미발에 나야. 선우지 직디는 류제 빼래. 류제는 용왕마요. 용왕마도 방을이냐. 용왕 영마도 공서. 또 이거 가는 로요. 동나무니. 근데 남생은 유무가 나요래. 지 나들더니 이 시간을 결 지라기는더니 들지기로 그 자와르가 야변 되게 좋은 거요래. 대학 강의도 직권도 상고 도지상 되게 좋은 거요래. 동나무 그것도 도지상 대상이 꽤 훌더요래. 다낭이 좋아하는 장소 최고 요로 저걸 쳐를 찾아봐지 쳐고 찍고도 내지 사지 추리고 놓는 거래. 근데 장소 최고다고 근데 나팔 뛰다 잡아대라도 뭐 처럼 나가 나서 요 대답했더니 딱 죽고 공수더니 로건이 죽고 되종네. 근데 당부들이 무슨 이제 느끼니가 이제 다 과해 봐. 다 과해 다또 돈이 봐. 대하고는 내가 다 마다봐 차들 다 부탁하네. 상화 다낭 봐야지. 당부 일이란 걸 생각하는데 이제 다 과해야지. 낭이 뭔가한테 이사적 생각 최소의 시간을 줘도 요래. 제 시간을 열어서 속대더니 자통다고 누가 다막을 로수도 거는 줘도 요래. 나디다들이 다 다나시에 말해. 로아르도 소소 나바나도 등에 나바나도 무슨 내가 대야 주마다 오면 똑같이 대피요 말이. 로아르도 참 저도 오 저아래 저아래 강이 오거든요. 딱 다니다 이피는 오니 빨리 다 저용 요래. 나리 소비는 또 많네. 어디에 다다마 사족세 맞기 줄 사고 좀 해봐. 사고는 다 사족세 유를 찌마 타대 라미 그랬더니 이제 다요 요래. 제 다음은 다들 라를 라고 잡아라스. 우리는 물을 못 제대로 그 감독이 물을 못 잡고지 못 봤다 그래. 이제 좀 이제 자사 마지나 잡고 그 자사 마지나 자사 마동나 잡고 그 꼬마 잡아지는 동강을 쪽으로 동해 용구 그래. 제가 와 배제도 그 통성지도 네 그거 용구도 자사가 잡을 버려. 이거 자사 정보도. 자사도 가이게 정보를 도망 무슨 사족세도 도망이니까. 다부장도 도망쇼요라. 대그 랑 좁았답니다. 랑 등에 타고 봐도 잡지도 봐요 그거래. 대그때는 랑 동네 좀 대상 그랑 좁았다고 쪽쪽 매가 쉬는 사족세도 도망은 요거래. 사족세도 도망은 저는 또 단지매 바꿔보게. 인피를 놓치도 단지매 가래. 단지매지 사족세도 도망가면 쏘고요라. 대인 사지에 렉서 제 사지에서 다쳐도 저 다다 사족세 끼망타도 사족세 너무 많은 거는 저 탐나봐 치어가거든요. 사족세도 너무 많은 거 야보고 관한 게 있어. 그는 무슨 바꿔 제거라. 마파는 와도 그다 공부를 돼. 저도 그다 마오지 돼요. 가이가 바꿔야 돼. 세분의 룩지 인핑을 놓지나 이 당주를 나중에 오지. 말은 공 인핑을 놓지. 제가 바꿔야 돼. 이 당주를 파도 받아는 그 철도 받아는 걸 봤어. 오, 사초도 파도 받아는 철도 받아가 말이지. 그 상식이 저거지. 바꿔도 내가 대답을 자와삼 짓지 마라. 요새 도모 요래. 바꿔야 돼. 제가 파고 샘만 파나. 저거 보고 갈 때 얘가 파스고요 말라. 얘는 로마서 짧지도 봐 주차를 사줬으면 노말로도 나 바꿔이 정말 제대로 오고. 막 견디이 막 바꿔이. 막 발견 파고 막 인생을 놓고 버렸지. 막 조바고 버렸지. 대매나 좀 바꿔는 저강 뭐 저거 도복할 때는 껍질야마도 가요 말라. 뒤에다고 지는 또 사줬으면 이제서는 드리라는 걸 사는 줄도 막 하는 줄도. 그래서 싸가지는 보통 도도 지시고 해야지. 이전에 다 봐야봐. 내가 맞아봐. 대입하시는 대신에, 다 랑을 사동나? 랑 차롱도도 차타오고 쉬었는데, 차롱 되게 작동이다, 쉬었어. 그래. 랑 셈도를 돈을 줘를 라면 또 오는데, 바쁘게 니고, 담보 랑을 유도를 드리, 이는 좋다고 그래. 뺏기다 그래. 지네들이 상하 재련을 드린 줄고 그래.
So then the next point is the Yidam practice, the creation stage practice of the secret mantra, the Vajrayana. And so also here, first we take refuge in the three jewels, and then recognize that the actual protection is Bodhicitta. So we first and foremost take refuge and cultivate Bodhicitta. Even when we engage in any other practices, it is always preceded by that. So having taken refuge and cultivated Bodhicitta, then we begin the visualization of the Deity. And when we practice the Deity, also sometimes people don't really understand how to engage in that practice. And so then they sit there and just think about themselves being there and just visualize like the lotus flower and the seed-soluble hung and the sun and the moon disk, and they only visualize themselves, but do not really understand the essence, the meaning behind the secret mantra visualization. So what is the meaning of secret mantra that we must extract? Drikung Master Dhammarata had said, see whatever appears and exists as the pure form of the divine deity. That is the perfection of creation stage in secret mantra. So everything that appears and exists, not just oneself. All phenomena in samsara and nirvana. And even when things appear in an impure way, it is just a temporary occurrence. In reality, everything is pure by nature. Everything is under the domain of the three kayas. If we do not understand that and we just engage in some artificial visualization, there is no real benefit from that. We must extract the essence of secret mantra when we practice the deity. And so we talk about all phenomena are the three kayas. The Dharmakaya and Sambhogakaya are the pure aspects. In the Nirmanakaya, we have both pure and impure. That means appearance and existence, the universe and all sentient beings are Nirmanakayas. So in that context, we talk about pure and impure because in this world there is the appearance of those to be tamed sentient beings and those who tame sentient beings, the Buddhas and the sentient beings. But we must realize that although they appear in this way, actually their ground is a single one. They actually are the same in their mind. The only difference is having recognized this nature or not. But on the ground, we are same and one, on the ground of Buddha nature. In the Dharmakaya, we are the same. So, no matter how vast the universe may be and however many sentient beings there may be, a single person's body and mind is the microcosm of it all. A person's body consists of the 5 elements. So, the universe does. Therefore, a person's body is the microcosm of the external universe. A body consisting of the 5 elements, in true nature, when realized, the 5 elements are the 5 great mothers or the 5 female Buddhas, referring to the meaning of emptiness. So they are empty of self-nature. And then in the mind, the sentient beings, in the mind that person has the 5 afflictive emotions. When one realizes their true nature, they become the 5 wisdoms. So therefore, in reality, a person's body and mind, and thus the entire universe and all sentient beings contained, are the union of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, Yap Yum, pure by nature. We give it different names, such as Samantabhadra or Vajradhara. They all are contained within this single ground of Samantabhadra or Vajradhara. That is the single ground. When we cultivate pure view, we realize that single ground. Or for example, we have said when we pick up a drop of water from an ocean, that drop has the same essence as the entire ocean water. So that is the quality of the Dharmakaya, that quality that pervades all. And then water appears in different ways. There's oceans, there's clouds, there's rain, there's different rivers in this world. And the different manifestations are the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya forms. So in the very beginning we must understand the ground of the universe and all sentient beings. The ground is pure. Ultimately it is empty of self-nature. This is how we must understand it in the beginning. And things just appear impure temporarily. We must purify that impure perception. So the path of secret mantra is the path of pure view. And in the very beginning we must recognize that our own body and mind are pure on their ground. And although we have those 5 afflictions, if you give rise to Bodhicitta, they will become the 5 wisdoms. And with that understanding we visualize the deity, and then we begin to realize the true nature of our outer form, and it will begin to appear pure like a rainbow in the sky. And in that way, through that practice, we accomplish the utterly pure body of Sambhogakaya. If we give rise to self-grasping, and based on that Buddha nature, then we temporarily experience the suffering and different forms in the 6 realms of samsara. And although suffering appears in different ways, it only appears temporarily, like an illusion. It will not last. It always changes. What is it that really changes is the mind, the thoughts in the mind. Either from self-grasping, one changes to self-grasping, or one transforms the mind into bodhicitta, according to the 37 practices. If you lack bodhicitta, you actually cannot really practice the hidden deity. The moment you give rise to bodhicitta, you have understood the essence of the hidden deity, the nature. So in the very beginning, we must understand the pure nature of all appearances when we visualize the deity. And so in the root verse on the Fivefold Path here, it says, see your own body, the king of deities. Your own body is the king of deities. So that body is the human body that is composed of the 6 elements or 6 constituents. That body is like the son of a great king. And if that young king does not take on the kingdom, but engages in crimes and begins to steal, also that king will be put into prison and suffer or even be killed. So even though we have these great qualities, this pure nature, if we engage in negative deeds, we will still suffer in the lower realms, in these 3 lower realms, or the 6 realms of samsara. So that king must take on the kingdom. And how does a king take on the kingdom in our context? Through cultivating bodhicitta. So when we take the bodhisattva vow, that in fact is preceded by the refuge vow, and we take the refuge vow in order to seek protection from suffering, because we seek liberation from suffering. And then we begin to understand that as long as we wish for our own liberation, we actually cannot really be protected. And so therefore we take the bodhisattva vow. And if we take the bodhisattva vow and cultivate bodhicitta, self-grasping will diminish. Whenever you have an altruistic mind, you do not think about the self. So self-grasping diminishes. Just as it is explained in the text when we take the bodhisattva vow, today you are born in the family of the Buddhas, the supreme or noble family. Before we take the bodhisattva vow, one is like an ordinary person, even like a dog, for example, just an ordinary being. And later one becomes the son of a king, superior. When we take refuge or the bodhisattva vow, we talk about the noble sangha or the superior sangha. So what is superior actually? For example, they put me on a high throne and then others sit below. What is it that elevates you actually? It is the altruistic mind. And so I have cultivated an altruistic mind. That means if others harm me, I will not harm them in return. An ordinary person, when being harmed, will respond and harm in return. For example, when you see His Holiness the Dalai Lama, what a high throne they built for him, why he's elevated, it is really the mind that is elevated, the bodhicitta that is elevated. If you lack bodhicitta, then a high throne has no meaning. That is the meaning of being put high. So once we have taken the refuge vow and the bodhisattva vow, we should take some pride in being a noble sangha and thinking that now I am a noble sangha. That means I must cultivate an altruistic mind. I must be able to practice patience. And then you will be actually superior. If you fail to cultivate an altruistic intention and still sit on a high throne, the only benefit of sitting on a high throne is that it will begin hurting your butt. But actually there is no other benefit than that. So that is the essence of the deity practice. to cultivate bodhicitta and to understand the ground. It is said in the root text, cultivate the visualization of the deity, that is your own body as a deity, the king of deities, in the unchanging ground. And the ground, as we have explained, we must realize appearance and existence to be pure. Although things appear in an impure manner, it is temporarily, we perceive it temporarily in an impure way. In reality, appearance and existence is pure. So when you visualize the deity, it is like melting the ice block with the hot water of bodhicitta, and you will be liberated from suffering. It is also taught in the refuge vow, once we are liberated from our own suffering, then we can show the path to liberation also to others. So first we must free our own mind stream, and then we can liberate other sentient beings.
오늘 무지개 suppo 정말 suppo 너는 마중 강에서도 같이 되어로 되게 되더라. 레기 짓을 도고 요래. 그냥 고마한테 마와 버리네. 레기 짓을 담는데 레나 반나서 담는데 좀 중을 내다. 좀 중을 내다. 가다 그띵이래. 니 요래. 선우지지 좀 중을 내 박차게 차요래. 나규지 생기도 가다 그띵이 레기 소리 가지고 더 이 좀비기 직상들은 또 인해서 지금도 되는 게 저런 처럼 나와서 지치 중좀 가라서 뭐 먹고 빼대다도 또 이제 저기 당연히 싫어. 그니 이제 이거다 매연 싫어 보러 요래. 야, 저거 보러 탈란 줘도 요래. 제 누이들이 같이나 야차고 마사로 보러 요래. 제 지르를 제가 또 하고 나와요. 뭐 사지 까마도 이거 하고 또 그요 말이에요. 따뜻한 체력다. 시랍라 되네. 시랍다. 주발에 체력이 시랍다. 나고 시랍은 레온 레와 찬칸이 나고 시랍다. 괜히 체력도 또 또는 이제더니 혹시 개블린이 잡고 말이야. 저렇게 양답을 체력이 개린이요. 양답을 체력 많이 받다. 네몇 개만 통지 요 말이지. 대 용거 쳐야 돼. 깎여요. 가지고 요 말고 가나요. 그런 거 거야 맞아도 세트가 거기까지 얘기가 말이야. 대다고 공시를 대진들이 다 깨는 거거든. 깨는 다 무슨 공을 되니 깨는 봐. 나서 깨는 데라 양동적 감이 동쪽이 다난 거죠. 이제 다 봐요 하고 동네 미바대가 깨는 데 감을 깨시 용어 깨는 깨시 용어 조른 속 깨는 조른 깨와 쳐와지라 갖고 나네. 대냐들이야. 대요래. 이 깨는 것도 남아 이 요래 예비 무슨 상상 예요래. 대 가이게 용 깨는 나와 예요래. 말지 공지 도셔 유지지 깨는 나와 예요래. 깨는 팀들이 깨는 대답을 받는 정도 요래. 이 사람이 깨는 당시 맞지. 보고 자로 맞지. 보고 담지 담아 보고 자로 납시 때라서 봤더니 저 답지리 그놈 먹고 나와지 깨로 대야 보시나지 깨시 좀 잡고요. 깨시 좀 와서 이 저런데 깨시 좀 와서 깨시기라 가도 가야 해지.
And so one understanding that you should take from what was explained previously, and that is very important, is no matter how vast the outer universe may be, it is contained within my own body. No matter how many sentient beings there may be, our minds is the same. This is the essence that we need to take from that. And then again, when we talk about this single ground, the single mind, then sometimes students ask, so if you say there's just a single ground, then why do some people experience so much suffering? They die in earthquakes and floodings, for example, and here nothing happens. Why is that? Some people experience illness and are wounded and hurt in their bodies. Some people are always well and fine. Why is that? It is because we follow along the karmas that we have accumulated. And beings have accumulated various karmas. There is two types of karma. There is the collective karma that created the outer universe. And then there is the individual karma, the individual actions that sentient beings engage in. And due to that, they experience individual experiences. As Lord Jigten Sumgön has said, karma is the embodiment of the momentary thought that a being gives rise to. So although water appears in different ways, or even ice, there's ice and there's like snowflakes and different ways in which it appears, but the ground still is a single one. There's a single basis. And in terms of the physical form, the body that we have, it will come to an end. It will be dispersed and turned into ashes. And the same is true for the outer universe. It will be dispersed. This is a point that also scientists have seen these days. In old days, only the Buddha knew about that. Now, the wisdom of science and the wisdom of the Buddhist view meet. And very intelligent scientists understand the Buddhist view. And at least one cannot actually refute it. One can actually not place an argument that would refute the Buddhist view. So there are some scientists who have a very materialistic view and they only believe what they see with their eyes. That is one way of viewing at it, but at the same time, the view, the authentic view, cannot be refuted by any argument. Although they may say that temporarily, it is nothing really that one can pay much into because they cannot refute the authentic view. And so when we practice the creation stage practice of the deity, there's all sorts of different ways of doing that. The first point that we must understand when we practice the deity is pure view, understanding that everything that appears and exists is pure by nature. The second point we must understand is the creation and completion stages and the point of their practice. The creation stage practice, that is the visualization, that purifies the existence of birth. The completion stage practice purifies the existence of death. So through creation and completion stages, we overcome the ordinary birth and death. And we talk about 4 different types of creation stage practice. And there's different ways of practicing. There is concise, middling, and elaborate practices. The 4 ways of visualizing, the 4 types of creation stage, relate to the 4 ways in which a being can take birth. Either in a womb, or in an egg, or through heat and moisture, or miraculous birth. Each of the 4 creation stage practices purifies one of these 4 types of birth. For example, the birth in a womb, in that creation stage practice we are introduced to how actually a child evolves and how it is born, the way in which we are born. Understanding that, we will know how to purify the existence of birth. And understanding the completion stage, we learn how to purify the existence of death.
내가 시골 동안 숨겨래 쌀와 박바 띠바 선소 Jerem Tamchi, Tumutita, Jerem Riba, Karina, the yard they go, Sava Tapati Bas. Sava, the Napa Sava, the semi Shatapo, Lakoti. Semi Shanata, Jerem Nagi Shatapo, Fly Kuzuk, Shatan, Kopa, the Sava Tamkira, that are Tenchibo, you also. They Tamchi, Sagi Kosango community, Zoka Kosa. 조금 무슨 저거요. 가시고 어디 tan가래 있어. 내 건다래 있어. 주말에. 들이 상고요. 상말에 서울에 상고요. 제 말에 있어. 일단 고독니 문이라 말이야. 문이라 말이. 얘는 다 로프거죠. 고독 문이 많이는 되게 되게 듣고요. 이제 두고 보면들이 로프고독이다 동지 뉴성 얘들이 보고 말해
소송을
로프고독
소송송
로프고독
네소
고독
그냥
고독 로프고독이다 동지 뉴스들이 말해 지금 말해 사람이 말해 때 로프고독은 내 말인데 너는 까문이로 문이로 와 다가들 사람이 말봐 이는 이 사람이 도대체 보여요. 강에. 빼는 그 사람들도 공부를 주 제들이 좀 샤트고 요 말이. 타가도 내가 돈 타가비 루이야 보이고 그것도 체다 된다. 들이를 야도에 근데 빼 야고도 또 찾게 그랬다고. 대대네들이 먹도 받치는 주바리. 샘때지 걔는 힘이 대파스와 걔는 먹기 좀나. 하나 싸워요, 말이죠. 나, 미라 샤이어리, 제치, 중동, 멍공, 고동, 이나, 땀들이, 샤고, 대바당, 제대, 양도 싸움을 들이, 삼을 깍지를 깨리, 샤이고, 그랬더니, 마찰내는 샤세, 쇠와치, 모차, 그랬더니, 샤나, 들이, 양도 들이, 삼탄, 법석가를 세네, 삼탄을 시작해요, 그래. 몇개 통화는 많이 나, 랑을 샌데, 가시를 싸우면 마찬가지로 사람이 제야매가 연구요리. 대니 강야가 되는 서는 먹고 샤와들 사 제야매가 사 제야매가 연구요리. 사람 때와 치고저는 지네들 딱봐 정의되는 서는 마샬로 제 정의되는 삼삼 샤기고 샤마샤이고 말. 지네들이 시대와 요타는 대지 지네들 샤롱어디 실라도 남나도 싸우고다나 사람들 지대 사람들은 늘는 공부서 그래. 얘는 늘 보면 가리를 셔도 랑그 샘드면 랑그 샘을 적도 마도 얘는 매화하고 고고리 랑그 리드 맞으면 샘 포랑들이 너니 매도 가버는 샘도 포랑 랑 정도 사 라마이 나요 변을 랑그 뉴도 고 도지나 추라도 똑바 도지 되는 추라도 죽고도 되면 샘을 도지 샤대요 샘 별로 샘 매롱만 찍자고 말이야 예를 들어 샘 매화시, 샘도 매롱나기 마시, તે 강나절을 절도바시래. 들이다들 이 호와 타마베 시마다 차바요 바타 마리니 다 플라이밍 되지. તે 라디 딱바로 되지는 들이 은혜 참들을 때마 탑들이 참들 말라까지 샤스 롱도 다들어 줘버들이 도망간 걸 불러줘봐. 무슨 적용 요리 살와지. 생살고 요리.
And so whichever of the 4 types of creation stage we practice, we must practice always 3 points whenever we engage in creation stage practice. And these 3 points are clarity, recollection of purity, and divine pride. In any of the 4 types of creation stage practice, we must practice these 3 steps. So first, there is clarity. That is the clear appearance of the deity's form in your mind. And sometimes it's hard to visualize the entire form of the deity, and so therefore we look at a statue or at a tanka, like an image of the deity, and it is very meaningful to have such an image of the deity. Of the three kayas, such an image of the deity belongs to the nirmana kaya. It is a created nirmana kaya, a made nirmana kaya. And so then again, some people may think that that's just a statue, that's just a picture. It's not real, that's not the real deity, it's just fake. So people think that, and from one aspect it is true, it's not actual deity, but there is something like it's called the like corrupt conventional, something like that. Although it's not real, it still performs a function, as Lord Trikden Sumgen has said. In the like corrupt conventional, it can perform a function. So although it is fake, it can perform a function. So yes, it is not the real deity, but still it performs the function of a deity. When we see the statue or another image of the deity, although it is not a real deity, still it appears in our mind. Because, for example, when we are just explained by words how does the deity look like, then it will not just like that appear in our mind. But when we see an image, when we actually see it with our eyes and we see the form, it will appear in our mind. And we will be enchanted by its form. We will think this is a nice form. And so first a sort of desire arises. One wants to look at that. So through the eyes, through the path of the eyes, we cultivate love and devotion in our heart for the deity. And then having looked at the picture, we close our eyes and then have an approximate appearance, an image of the deity in our mind. And so then again and again we look at this picture. The deity appears in many different ways, in the head and the hands and the implements and all the different elements that make up the deity. And when we see that, we cultivate faith and love for the deity. And then we think about the deity again and again and again cultivate love for the deity. And at some point, although in the beginning may be unclear, at some point it will appear clearly in our mind. And even if it is not clear, sometimes people say that they still never forget about the deity. So of these two, what is better? Either to see the deity clear or to never forget about the deity. It is better not to forget about the deity. For example, if you always think about Chenrezig, even if you don't see Chenrezig, sometimes you may see, sometimes you may not see. But if you always think of Chenrezig, then you will always be filled with faith and love. And that is really the essential point of deity practice. And then for the visualization of the deity, where does it appear? Does it appear outside or inside? We talk about front visualization. We are instructed, visualize that deity in front. Although it is said that way, in reality, the deity is nowhere separate from your mind. It's not anywhere outside from your mind. Your mind is like a mirror, and whatever you think about, the deity will become that. The mind is like a flower bud that can blossom into anything. Not even talking about deities. If you just have a friend that you love very much, and you think about this friend, the mind already has become that. The mind is just like a mirror. It can become anything. So when you practice the deity, then you let go of ordinary samsaric clinging fixation, and you remember the qualities of the deity. And at times it will appear clearly, at times it will not appear clearly. In any case, when the deity remains with you and you never forget about the deity, sometimes people have dreams about the deity and that the deity directly appears to them or gives a prophecy, and also through that they accomplish the common siddhis, accomplishments. So that is the first aspect of clarity.
干嘛中，干嘛你这么走要好。
Then we take a break for 20 minutes and drink some tea.
Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Tata Savata Patima Sumkuni. Napa Savate Lea. You want for a drink. Hassan, you're right. Nikirum Jang. In your Januki, you're Tamuko, Pedini, Zumdini, Sajak, Che, Lumpinato, got Tankartan, Yatan, Tankartan, that you have gone. Doctor part of gone. Then it took only Margom, with the tone, same the remote synergy. Gone, the Ningunis also took you away. Nothing to Rinpoche the monk, Tungmo Gomnati, something topical golden knees, someone is simply knees of Tokyo, same practical. Jeremy Jungle, take young Calvity, Sawa Territory, fly Guji, Charlotte, Sakya. That number not so, they don't get Garnet, Takwa, dinner. Nang to you, you think that Thomas say, Guji, Charlotte, dinner, don't you already. How did you tell Charlotte? You should get on the Kabato, Lamata, you did. Guji, Charlotte, took Charlotte, they Charlotte, Tanang, the fly, Tardin, the party, Baz. Then the Shawana, GJ took some Yuri, Ramada, they told you. 조금 돌지도 사포도 가래죠. 야, 대통령 religious 계속을 빼는 사 가시를 propagate 정도래. 되는 두기를 바로 서로 놓고 따래. 그들이 어디에서 지행고요래. 근데 꾸준히 저렇게 하길 우주더니 rinpoche 셀때라서 봐. 이게 대마다 셀가 동대다고 이말 우주더니 도력이게 유대의 말이 야통다고 인고래. 뭐 동방 남바사와지. 대동강은 별도 셀이죠. 지금 가는. 그런데 rinpoche 나서는 사족습이 셀게 빼. 총총 들이면 내 빠치고 리탕치고 요래 때리더니 rinpoche 나서고 이제 인지다. 요래 있어라. 사이프지 차로도 그봐. 첨부 요래. 대라들이 다다 타마를 똑바 저와는 깨는 면도 딱바이소 깨는데 양장에도 보는데 타마를 받더니 뭐죠 지 자로 대라서 뭐 담지 딱바를 변조고 요래 이 비용을 이네 빼는 소탈을 갖고 자다 정화 지나서 막 빵고 요래 아이가 빵고 나오니 막 나디 다디 용도 나가 지대도 나를 됐다고 내 됐다고 나 됐다고 나 요거 이걸 때려 쓰는 좀 받아 잡아시 마다 기배우네 뭐 좋고요 말이 그래서 뭐 좋고요 말이 진도 좋고요 말이 진짜 소다가 걸어 마음다리 사하가 깔라고 가리는 좋고요야 내용만 놓고 좋고요 가리 나요 말 나면이 사족 생각나서 플라티다 때 이상들이 플라티다 때 별로 제티로 뭐 딱바로 뭔데요나 내용만 가리롱 쭉 진짜로 가리는 제티로 뭐 진절 소 돌면 되지 소라고 소사 봐마도 일반적으로 말이지 나디요 말 나디 요미 띵거지 나디 면은 띵이 저도요 통상지 띵이 저도요 나디 이거 깔리고 기타가 소소사 수바도 하나 나는 되어도 통도 나 그냥 때 소는 체가 와서 바꾸요. 또 그냥 사촉성이래. 근데 저는 뉴신은 깨끗하게 되게 제발 하고 될때 소속도 없고 싫어도 되게 좀 동선이 많이 봐. 오 상하게 럽적까지 좀 되지. 나중에 보통 플라이스는 좀 이참다 저걸 왔어. 소탈을 가면 나당 집에 나지 맞아 그랬더니 다 나지는 시바하더니 노초로 말았어. 그랬더니 동물은 뉴모만 있잖아. 그랬더니 가리는 애들이 오래 그래 뉴모배 맞으나 다더니 반자 유몽데 주봉 예제 유몽이 뭐 적공적에서 뭐 뭐지 좀 유몽을 잘 타겠지 유몽을 잘하면 가리는 게 그거였어 어딜 내가 닭과 진바하지 자 다리도 좀 밤에 제는 탐지 다리들 하면 쏴지게 다리 잡서 등사탑지 오 그니 저로 또 다리요 그래서 잡으면 그 자동들 거리 시랍도 빼래 그래서 시랍 빼 시랍 간디리 빼라는 거 지금 시랍으로 빼는 이를 시당은 자 시당도 yap고 말이다 시랍게 시당도 딱 좋고 시랍도 라저게 빼 매게 빼 그래서 앞으로도 그저 매공 받고 요래 유보고 꽉차 유보도 지만도 받았지 시랍도 통한 저마다고 통을 뒤빼래 매당 들어와요. 매그 보면 딱 야지한테 슥슥 오더라. 매대들이 있고, 영광을 안 지니면 용띵들이 뜨고 요래. 대략들이 빼당 동문이 자용하더니, 이께서 오고 양성을 해. 이 빼시버가니, 뽕빠 마지 빼두는 콩 주세. 뒤랑 동문이 하마고는 빼도 야들 빼도 동문이 배시고 말이야. 그냥 고아무져서 파. 이나라 자꾸 요래 너무도 어디라가 이나 대지고 파도 요래 첫 농장 소용시고 말이 그래 그당시 첫 따왔던 데 시고를 파 지라 따지라 이거 말이 신앙을 해야 돼 너는 저는 그지 잘 강해야 돼 마다 막 심한도 마다 다 그러지 그래서 잡으면 저정도 없어 되고 버스만도 막아这시합을 안 유리상들이 자동들이 다 시합이这用定性了整理嘛是吧这道理这个他们你把嘛不少呀有的一样的他来到木巴里在这接人样我们就话他就那有这个你常的东西不有的弄了这他去了我起码嘛这个也通到了吧这怎么能对我说사와 닭바지.
And so we have talked about the first point of this stream, there's a clarity, recollection of purity, and the divine pride. And so first we have said the clarity, that is to see the image of the deity with great clarity. And then again, one engages in this practice according to one's mental capacity, highest, middling, or lower. In an ideal case, how one trains in the visualization of the deity is that one can, for example, begin with the bottom part of the deity, like the lotus seed, and then move through different parts of the deity upwards and until one reaches the crown of the deity, and then again from the crown one visualizes one's way down. So in that way, when one gradually visualizes, one draws that image really in one's mind stream, and through this practice, in fact, the creation stage will become quite clear. If you do this over and over again many times, then at once, at some point, the deity will actually appear in your mind. So that is the clarity. And so then when we visualize the form of the deity with the implements and its hands and the legs and so forth, then we also must understand why the deity appears in this way. All the elements, like the implements and so forth that make up the deity, represent the inner enlightened qualities of the deity's mind. They are displayed in a form of the different elements that make up the deity. So those great masters who have realized that, they understand the pure aspect of the deity. They understand that each element and each implement of the deity only represents a certain quality in the deity's enlightened mind. So the second point is the recollection of purity. For example, peaceful deities are adorned with 13 ornamentations, called the 13 Vajrasattva ornamentations. Or some other wrathful deities are depicted with the 6 bone ornaments. They, for example, represent the 6 paramitas. So when we see the different form of the deity, then we remember the enlightened qualities that these actually represent. So, for example, the deity also is adorned with jewel ornamentations, gold, for example. Then we should understand the meaning of that, what that gold represents. For example, the gold and also other brilliant jewels represent Bodhicitta, something that is very valuable. Even a small piece of it is very valuable. And so when you visualize the form of the deity, it does not appear in a material way, possessing any true existence, but it clearly appears like a rainbow in the sky, but yet it lacks a true nature. It lacks any essence from its own side. So it is appearance and emptiness. When we visualize the deity with all the different elements that make up the deity, the purpose of doing that is to transform ordinary thoughts into pure thoughts. So first we transform impurity, impure grasping, into the pure form of the deity. For example, in the context of pratimoksha, the individual liberation, all of these ornamentations, for example, is not allowed. One is not allowed to wear perfume or jewels, ornamentations. All these adornments are something to be abandoned in the context of pratimoksha. And that is because in the context of pratimoksha, there still is the grasping at a self. One thinks that this is my ornament, and I am this or I am that, and I have this and that. There's this constant thought of an I. There's a grasping to the I. And because there is a grasping to the I, one is not allowed to wear ornamentations, wear perfume, and so forth. So in that context, these adornments are objects to be abandoned. However, in the Vajrayana, in the secret mantra, one can partake of anything. One can partake of any of the 5 sense pleasures. And that is because in the context of Vajrayana, there is no I. When you have cultivated bodhicitta, you have the awareness of being the deity. For example, you think, I am actually Tara. And then when you meditate on Tara, seeing yourself as Tara and putting on ornamentations and enjoying the 5 sense pleasures, actually it becomes an accumulation of merit, and there is no fault in that, because there is no grasping in self. So the difference lies in whether one grasps at a self or not. If there is no self-grasping, then one transforms faults into great qualities. When we practice the deity, if we practice the deity with a self-grasping mind and make offerings to the deity and have some expectations to obtain some results, then we actually only obtain half the merit. We will lose some of the merit due to our self-grasping intention. So what makes the difference is an instant of perception, the way one turns one's mind, whether one gives rise to bodhicitta or a self-grasping mind. We cultivate this awareness through applying the discerning wisdom. And so from the perspective of Vajrayana, anything can be appropriate. As there is no self-grasping, there is also nothing prohibited. There is anything is allowed. One can enjoy any of the 5 sense pleasures and wear jewel ornaments and so forth. In the context of pratimoksha, all that is not allowed because there is a grasping to yourself. So the grasping is not permitted. That was the point of the Buddha. So the essence of that is that we must eliminate the afflictive emotions. And if we have already eliminated the afflictive emotions, then we can partake of anything. So in any context, in any of the paths, what is to be abandoned are the afflictive emotions. Lord Chikdun Sumgyen said, the 84,000 different Dharma teachings are a single antidote to the afflictive emotions. So we only need to eliminate the afflictive emotions, and once they are eliminated, one can partake of anything. So the second point in the Yidam practice is the recollection of purity. For example, when we visualize Vajrayogini or any other deity, we hear about the clear aspects of that deity that make up the deity, the different implements. And then one may think that this is just an ordinary implement. But you must understand that it represents an enlightened quality in the deity's mind. For example, Manjushri holds a sword. That sword represents wisdom, the mindful awareness that cuts through negative emotions. For example, when anger arises, and in that very moment you recognize, oh, the hatred has arisen, this is my true enemy, I must not give way to it, then you already cut through it. And that cutting through awareness, that is the wisdom sword of Manjushri. Sometimes also the wrathful deities are surrounded by masses of fire, and fire also has that quality of burning away. And what is burned away is our grasping at our negative thoughts, our afflictive emotions, habitual patterns. Wisdom awareness recognizes them as an illusion and therefore burns them away. That is the nature of fire. It burns any object away. And also fire, as it is an element, has the nature of the female Buddhas. So it also represents that quality. So it is important that when we apply an example, that we also understand the meaning of that example. Lord Chikdun Sumgyen said, if we only look at the word, if we only look at the illustration but lack a realization of the meaning, then we will not grasp the essence of what is being conveyed. For example, we look at a tree, we inquire in all the different branches and leaves, but we forget about the root. In the Dharma, we must understand the root. That is most important. And whatever we know above that, that is excellent, but we must necessarily understand the root of what is being taught, the essential meaning. So all the different elements that make up the deity, the ornamentations and the different implements of the deity represent an enlightened quality of the deity's mind. And the visualization of these elements purifies our ordinary grasping at a concrete reality. So for example, the sword of Manjushri, someone who has a grasping at a concrete reality will just think that's a sword and will not think anything else about it. But in reality, that sword represents something. It represents the enlightened qualities of Manjushri's mind, of wisdom awareness. So it's not an actual sword, but it represents a quality. So that is an essential point to understand when we visualize the deity. And then for beginning practitioners, when we visualize the deity, then we may not be able to have a clear visualization of the entire form of the deity with all its implements and ornamentations. But it is good to just know that all these implements represent what they represent, and that they represent the enlightened qualities of the deity's mind. So the point of seeing it that way is to cut through the grasping at a concrete reality. The deity appears like a rainbow in the sky. So we cut through the grasping at a concrete material reality. And that is the point also of recollecting the purity of the deity.
일절로 가다 다낭들 동다 방법 요래 이놈이 다 씨발 장데 집어지 동체 뭐에 다 씨발 강리 다다 그 동보 똑바티 초초 다 그러라 다 이 다낭기 다다 랑글 세미와 선느끼야데 드바들라 다도니 다니 이디지 도바데 저들은 다이 이디지 도바데 그 탐지 니니들 바다 도바타지 탑도 있어도 도바타지 다고 다다 마다발 통화대 다 참아 다발라 하죠 들이 다바데 다도 공만이 통한테 이러고 그래 대 다발시 걸었더니 나도 다 난지 내가 닦고 이미 띠갈 마다 뚱갈 그래도 사철 매롱 유황하지 라미로 사사에 가사가 사사를 보고요 초초를 보고요 나 담제 이제는 유황하지 사진 공사 보고요 사진 전에 공사 또 보고요 대도시 내가양 괜히 배라 그래서 물을 못 저는 용왕만을 줘요 들었더니 내상이 가리에 쇼고 받는 바요 받들이 차리요래 들었더니 용왕만이 저리 딱 빨리 염증망라지리 삼나 그런 것을 가라도 쳐놓고 저도 마마께라지 초대 줄로 들었지 대바라도 요요래 대와 대대와도 요거 새벽 가 대와 이거래 추리에서 이거보다 정말도 받아 요거 말해 리리들이 다 요강 가서 감탄제들이 이제 다 빠져 받아 시골을 했지 대남나 거기 양철 좋아해 보여 요강 가서 다 빠져나 사로 맞고 저로 맞고 요강만 사용다 요강을 누가 쉬지도 않는 없이 접대들이 인상이 없고요 내 거래 대답을 줄 팔이 가는 데 걸 초랑을 내기 봐 싸라 내기 봐 지금 미수는 돌을 저러고 랑을 내게 초속을 내서 봐 내버려 요한을 가야 제요 말이지 뒤들은 양 내지 되는 파하고 어떻고 그래 랑도들이 다 빠르죠 다 빠져 거기 설마다 빠르죠나 어떻게 다 촉지 동부는 내게 되는 거고 대시성들이 문이 다 빠르지 마다 빠르다 나니 너무 빠르지 뉴뭐 쪼까지 나니도 다 좋잖아. 야, 대장제 다 관저 좋잖아. 다른 친구 유모가 대야 다 하고 요래. 유모가 다 소리 찡하는 정도고 요래. 대다 저는 야 마마 다 소리 레벨을 다 잡으려는 간에 동이 가디 요걸 사차 라라 맨날 끼던 거 로자다 급지. 로자다 사과리를 다음 녀석은 원래 미피체 대요가 진짜 성공을 말이야. 그래서 나타나면 눈이 저는 이거 눈이 막통어요 말이. 혀인지과 통진지과 매진지과 모이지과 마뭐 정말 텔랭이 보고 하는 거 이래야 되게 탈이고 그랬지. 뭐 기분 되고 서로 미우니 무슨 미네 나쁜 놈들이 기분 되고 그랬더니 사이 통지 또 요래 무슨 레리저도 대사들이 될 때 따서 손이 힘 탑발이지 지요래. 있어야지 로마들 레리저도 로마 교신이 나지 추수만하기 요 말이지. 나 기자시와는 기마도 요 말이지. 교신이 나봐 추수만은 내 시금 말이 비세 시금 말이. 아 저도지는 우라이게 달라서 느끼게 놀라고 시. 나도 기보다 라르는 지 먹고 내 출신이 되게 니는 니도 가는 요 말이. 나 교신이 나be 쓰이나? 아. 교신이 나be 쓰이나? 오, 사단로 마음째 담지 폐교 추니게 폐교도 로걸 봐. 사단로 가지고 로이게 돌로도 느끼게 좀더 매게 나도. 이 추기에 지나가더니 로하면 너해. 로걸 봐. 왜 로고 요 말아. 왜 되게 용을 시시 요 말고. 이게 지금 동남에 동남에 시시 요 말아. 이나 양선이 저등에 하고 요래서 저등에 용을 가리 양선이 있고 하고 요래. 내가 늘 주도록 해. 주든이 이제 주든이는 괜히 요래. 제 방법밖에 내가 용기 해와도 이제는 이주 가양 요 말해야지.
So the word pure view also is very meaningful, and so pure, that word itself already is very meaningful. Pure just means, for example, when you have a dirty face and you wash it with water, it becomes pure, clean, purified. And so that pure view we practice for our own body and mind, and also towards the entire universe and all sentient beings. We, as ordinary beings, have a grasping at the concrete reality of this universe and the sentient beings. There is a dualistic grasping of purity and impurity. All dualistic grasping in the end comes down to the grasping of self and others. There's always a duality that arises. And through cultivating a pure view, that dualistic grasping is purified. So first, through the deity practice, we purify impure perception into pure perception, and ultimately we purify even that pure perception into emptiness. So ultimately everything transforms into emptiness. So in the context of cultivating pure view, what are the qualities of pure view and what are the faults of an impure view? For example, the 5 elements or 4 elements of earth, water, fire, wind. When we see earth, we just think that's earth. We see that all over. When we see water, we just see that as water. But in reality, the 5 elements do not transcend the enlightened activities of the Buddha. Therefore, the elements are really nirmanakayas. When one understands that, one will see everything completely pure. For example, this human body consists of the 5 elements. And as it consists of the 5 elements, with this human body, we know that we can do many things. It is very powerful. We can either use it to engage in positive or negative karma. That is the power of the 5 elements that we use as a support. And these 5 elements are by nature pure. We call them the 5 great mothers, the 5 female Buddhas. For example, when you have that pure view, you wash your food, for example, with water, then you will not just think that's just water, but you will think that's mamaki, the Dakini mamaki. And when you use this water, you will give rise to faith and love and great joy. You will not just think that's just water. A normal person would think that is just water, and they just leave it with their belief in the reality of how the water appears to them. So in that way, through cultivating pure view towards anything that we encounter, we gradually cultivate with one by one, with each thing that we encounter, we cultivate a pure view. We increase our pure view. And so again, somebody may have something to say about that. Sometimes people then say, so well, if you say that the 5 elements are pure, then why are there natural disasters? Why are there earthquakes? Why are there floodings? There is so much harm that is being caused by the elements. If you say it's pure, why does that happen? And so what is the answer that we give here? We still follow the law of karma. And if we have accumulated negative karma, we transform medicine into poison due to the karma that we have created. So the 5 elements actually do not do anything. They just are the way they are. But due to our karma, we experience either suffering or happiness. So when we practice pure view, we understand that whatever appears is pure, but ultimately we also must understand the workings of karma within that. From our perspective, why do we not perceive things as pure? It is due to the afflictive emotions, and the root of these afflictive emotions is self-grasping. When we purify self-grasping, naturally we also purify the other afflictive emotions. They are transformed into wisdom, the 5 wisdoms. In the past lifetime, if we have engaged in negative deeds, then in this lifetime, in this world, we can see people experience great difficulty. Some other people are unharmed by whatever happens. Many people I've seen are over 100 years old and still they are in their homes and nothing has ever happened to them. And others experience everything. For example, I myself can say I have seen all the different types of suffering that exist in this world, in this lifetime. For example, I have experienced the fears of water or drowning, or the fears of weapon, the fears of fire, the fears of the prison, the fears of the starvation, and so forth. Various different types of suffering that have ripened due to negative karma. And yet I was liberated from these difficulties. So due to negative actions, their result came to a ripening. However, due to some virtuous actions, the Deity protected me. And for this reason, I really have great trust into the Dharma from the depths of my heart. And believe that if I share this advice with you, the disciples, that it will be of some benefit. And so, I am not a great scholar, a great master who knows how to speak eloquently, and maybe I cannot teach like a great scholar. I cannot teach any scriptures, really, and I'm just teaching from my own experience, what I have experienced from my own practice, unlike many other masters who speak very eloquently and they nice like poetic ways of saying, like we invite the deities and the nagas, and there's this prayer that Rinpoche said, that they speak very eloquently in this way. And so I personally don't know how to speak in this eloquent way, but I have experience in practice and I know suffering. I have experienced that and know how to overcome it. And especially for beginning practitioners, therefore, I feel that it will be of some benefit if you listen to these words of experience. Just maybe if you have great qualities, then maybe I have nothing higher to say.
다른 대리 인물들이 다 단계 배우는 봐야 여기 학벌들이 다 단계 가고 이제는 시도 펜션, 보마 펜션, 그런 다 하고 참아더니 저는 이제 이 자리에 가 낙적지색이 빠오던 가로서 뭐나 다다 새끼를 가서 포탑지 길에서 못함지 뒤로가 공수 놓고 요래 얘는 사이다 만나야 사삼지 남이들이 다 그저 같이 왕냐 마토 냥이 이제 제려면 가면မရှိ사든도 요가 사든지와 제도 요나 사삼지 님보 강에 길에서 이제 뒤로만이 야, 늦지 때문에 되는 사실은 보고사 가고요. 사실은 보고사 가고요. 이래들 이제 로마니아 들이 서고가 또 갔다 포모니 유기 가서 빼다 들자라 포모니 요래. 들지라 포모니 요래. 뭐다가 갔더니 샘지 봐라 샘이 포모 많은 민스. 샘 바로 포모니 요 말에. 뭐다가 가서 포모니 요 말에. 꼬다가 가서 제자고요, 나? 대양 주지 때문에 서로 반을 강대봐. 야, 지네들도 제때 좀 많이 가는 나설라나? 함께 되는 되고요, 양지 뒤에서 우리 송내지 강래. 쏴찍히는 전례 삼십 몇. 대남들 세는 양설라는 유로 볼라고 빼나? 다다. 쏴 양설라는 등에는 팽거를 했어. 가리 팽거리 세 열대 등이지 랑을 내죠 관계 지하서 내게 랑양 이봐 누구 요래 서번 누구 요래 તે ગોત મથા પાડે છે જો માંગો જેના નામ જબ સેમ દુનિયા જબ સેમ જો દુનિયા જબ સેમ જો ઓરે સેમ જો દીકામની રંગે સારા તે પાતા 누구 요봐 તને સારા જો દીકેનો ફોંદી દુનિયા નામ તો પાછા ખાંચા가 까비 તે 파 상자네 사지 집부 공화지 집부 동 강요머리가 등일 피고야 마사 가야 마사 사지 집부 공화 집부 라공디 등이 체로 참정을 그 가리 피게 되네 등에지 양세 여대 기나 등에 샤유고 요르지 등에지 그 생기 체도 고요 말 참탄은 체도 고요 참탄은 양등의 용거리 양등의 공로들이 등에지 야 로벌거라기 제 오죠 로벌 좀 했죠 로벌거 등에도 나고 대화도 등에 로벌걸 안 주는데 제가 이제 다 말해서 하고 등에는 지금 한 거야 차를 운이 뱅그래 마소는 남용이 오래요 가나 딱 봐, 플라스틱을 와서 왔다 들 때니 같이 강이 플라스틱 말해 플라스틱 sem이 샤드 플라스틱 제와 치고 제야매가 이마 강이 가르치는 사들 납상 기용 그래 제 기용 가르치는 좋은데 지하더라 또 상이 샤드를 사들 기인들 샘들 사들 절대 요래 생파랑 매랑도 있는데 다리라도 사족샘 짬도도 생기 고시 요래 예를 들면 사들 샘이 맞지나 사실은 보아고 말해 봐도 놓고 보아되면 되래. 사실 샘맞이나 사실은 있으면 받침도 오요래. 정말 축거래. 사실 가면 제요래. 대답은 네봐야 깨르면 주고 요래. 대답은 용할 때만 동 가리시고 사실 이거 띠드시고 그래. 사실 용띠 가리 신배 이식해. 무슨 생각난데 차디 시합을 가면 사가 맞췄어 요 말이야. 내식님 보지, slag sender 들어와요. 주문 들어온다고 해야지. 제가 생긴 그 레랑 박자 치니, 이 레랑 박자도 좀 더 탑대. 제가 두개야 돼. 사바가 이게 그 나디지 용지세. 제가 두개야 돼. 라서 제가 치고요. 주습기 사지에 담지 제가. 찍듯이 말해야지. 자, 찍을 주습기 사지에 담지 제가 참고요. 제가 두개야 돼. 좁은 늪터들이 대단히 이라고 생각나. 사지 상인제도 유래지나 나디 박차 등에 남고 등에도 남고 실도 그러래. 땀을남다고 차로 세열도 등에 유나야 남들도 세로 등에 비와. 지금 로마 마법을 라비는 거래. 오 뭐 냐들 린다 지고 나 세열도 등에도 유는 남들도 세는 뭐에도 없지. 팽에도 냐들 뭐 냐들 나로 되도 용이 거래. 내가 다다가 등에나 팽기요래. 바돌이야 사실 이렇게 좁다고 그래. 사실 좁지나 사실하게 쓰는 진식이고 그래. 가시는 터지기 오래 가지고 봤다고 터지기 오래세. 요 시절에 매야 시절에 가시 터지기 요나 줄라도 지지는 줄을 터지 봤다고 또 봤다고 보데 문제 레게 좀 요리 레게 좀나 지 레게 들어와요나 내가 딱 저거 말해. 레게 들어와게 줄 너봐 따마도 따사니 기대로 주고 나지 그 하나 땅에 유서로 줄 딱도 그랬다. 야, 그때 가야 말이고 땅 가르치겠지. 사람 공들이 주 나도 요 말봐. 나도 맨들이 바로 그 말을 공사 열이 요 말. 맨날 코토를 파로 오는 코토 싸바 교왕이 막에 줄 쳤다는 줄이 뒤로만 공들나. 코토 싸망이 말대로 코토를 파 미로 줄라 용품이가 말. 대다 서다랑 내가 길러 팽기 거래. 야, 르나가 생고 등에나 팽기요. 내 나타나야 팽기야. 나타나야 거리 팽기요. 딱과들이 나도 말이야. 나타지 세는 동네나. 엠치도 그 나타면은 내 나타 독 대서 따라 나타지 요저 건. 다보 줄 롱터는 도고요. 센터는 도고요. 센터는 서로 롱터는 도고요. 롱터는 서로 차트를 보고 나타는 나타 소리 도고요. 너는 나타 욕도 공대 나타 좋으래. 야. 같이 나타 욕장 나타지 잡을 인수고 보는 라고 사이당 강요만 찍고 대홍장 공대 매라기 있어. 왜 패기오래. 사지 공대 나타지 증기요. 나타지 말이나 나타지라니 저 짜다 심어 도로 나타지 파도 요래. 요요 요랬고 그거 도로 요라. 기보자로 그래서 이들 파마로도 철지고 요래 있다고는 르프에 따라 됐다고 내 나타나야 패고 나가 등이나야 패고 요래 제 서만나야 패고 요래 니모바나야 패고 요래 잡고 총총을 잡아 자시 있을 거 요래 사실은 맞지나 됐다고 그래 야구 야사시고 야구들 그래 코라왕요래 그래 코라왕요를 코라대요 그 가리치는 그 약합되는 가리 코라왕요라 어디는 이제 소소라다다 누구 미바도라 라왕데 쳐오네 내가 제일 야사도 되는 구독 산책 생기 야사서 대사 편을 때리자 도당 산책 생기 야사 세고 내로 통통나 네 허절미 라동 지동이 왔다가 들이 야사 토야 요리 라동 야사 라 이도 죽고 로도시 있다가 빠들이 요거 요래 야사 이 요래
So another great quality of cultivating a pure view is also when we cultivate pure view towards each other, we eliminate the grasping towards each other. For example, between Vajra siblings or other disciples and friends. Ideally, from the perspective of Vajrayana, we perceive the outer universe as the celestial palace, and all the beings in this universe as Dakas and Dakinis. We can see all the sentient beings to be emanations of Tara and Chenrezig. If they are male, Chenrezig; if they are female, Tara. There are many different deities to be practiced. And even if you have not received an empowerment and you don't really know how to practice the creation stage practice, still maybe you want to have some deity practice, and there's still another way to practice the deity through cultivating a pure view. The essence of all the different deities are Chenrezig and Tara. All the deities are contained in Chenrezig and Tara. And it is very beneficial if you're able to see everyone as Chenrezig or Tara. And when you engage in practice, Chenrezig and Tara is a deity that anyone can practice, even if you have not received the empowerment. And it depends on whatever deity you feel close to. Some people have different karmic connections and feel closer to a female and some closer to a male deity. So you can practice some Tara or Chenrezig. In the external form, when they appear as Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya forms, there is a duality of male and female, Tara and Chenrezig. On that level, there is a duality. There are male and female sentient beings, and there are male and female teachers who tame sentient beings. That is all from a conventional perspective. From an ultimate perspective, from the perspective of the nature of mind, there is no male and no female. Within the mind, there is no duality of male or female. This duality only exists on the conventional level. The deities appear in whichever form necessary in order to tame sentient beings. So whatever suits your mind, either Tara, Chenrezig, male or female, you can engage in this practice. All deities are contained within Tara or Chenrezig. Lord Jigten Sumgön said, if you accomplish a single deity, you accomplish the enlightened activities of all the deities. So if you only engage in a practice of a single deity, it is sufficient. It is also sufficient in order to overcome any kind of difficulties. Only the practice of a single deity. For example, you may have some external difficulty. The outer environment may be difficult, there may be a problem or suffering, and that is due to the karma created in past lifetimes, and we have no choice but to experience it. We all experience that, and we cannot turn away the result, since the cause has already been created. But then there is also the inner grasping mind that grasps at this suffering, and therefore it suffers. And it is that mind that we can change, even if we cannot change the outer circumstance. We must transform the mind that grasps at suffering. And that also can be transformed through cultivating faith and devotion into a deity. So if you always think of that deity, it will be beneficial to overcome any kind of difficulty, suffering, negative thoughts, habitual patterns. Whenever they arise, you should stop it as it arises and think of the deity. Recite the deity's mantra. Do not even think I am practicing the deity so that I can overcome that difficulty. You just think nothing at all. You don't think about your suffering. You just stop the thought of suffering and think of the deity only. So although there may be some external difficulty in the environment, if the mind does not grasp at it to be suffering, then whatever arises externally, it cannot keep your mind in bondage. Your mind will be free and will not be overcome by the difficulty and the suffering. The suffering that we experience also is just a temporary difficulty. The Buddha had said, beings are obscured by adventitious things, so it is temporary. Our problems, our suffering, our thoughts, happiness, suffering, all of these experiences are temporary. They are compounds and impermanent. And realizing that, you will be free of fear of any suffering. And so this is my personal experience. If you just pray to a single deity, the power is great. It is like praying to all the deities, because all the deities are really contained in one deity. They all are the same. And the essence of deity practice is to never forget about the deity. And if you habituate the deity and never forget about the deity, then at some point when you really experience a great difficulty, immediately you will be able to remember the deity and you will surrender to the deity and think, whatever happens, may it happen, I give my faith fully into the deity. And if you accomplish that, then after death, after you have died, your mind will become the deity only by thinking of the deity. Because the mind is like a mirror, and whatever you think, it will become. So in this lifetime, if we have habituated to taking refuge and cultivating Bodhicitta and the creation of the deity, there is no other power that is needed actually at the time of death. That in itself is the Sambhogakaya power. If you just remember the Yidam deity, when you die, after you have died, your mind will merge non-dually with the deity, and you will be born in that deity's pure land. So such is the power of remembering the deity. And when you remember the deity, you must also remember the qualities of the deity. And so the qualities of the deity is first, the deity's omniscient wisdom. Wherever mind pervades, Buddha nature pervades. And wherever that pervades, the wisdom of the Buddhas pervades. And on that level of Buddha nature, we all are connected, like the beads on a mala string. We all are really one on this level. There is one pervasive mind. And then sentient beings, due to karmas, experience various difficulties and habitual patterns that they have formed, and the deities know it all through their omniscient wisdom. And then the second quality that they have is the quality of compassionate love. They see with their wisdom all our suffering, and through their compassionate love, they apply a method to protect us through compassionate love. And all deities have that love. The love of all the Buddhas of the three times is contained within a single deity. All the Buddhas are contained within a single deity. And then the third power is the power of protection through loving kindness and compassion for all beings. They protect us. And so when we cultivate our faith and love to the deity, the deities will support us to eliminate our habitual patterns, transform our suffering, our negative thoughts and fixations. So we come to a point where we will remain inseparable from the deity at all times. Even we will have a dream about the deity. We never separate from the deity. And when we reach that point, even if we experience some external difficulty, the inner mind will not experience any suffering. Many of my disciples have actually told me that. Although I experience great outer difficulty, a great problem, still, when my mind does not grasp at that, I do not experience this as a difficulty. So if you really engage in practice, that is the result that you will experience. I have experienced that myself, and I found it very beneficial. It will protect you now in this lifetime whenever you encounter difficulties. It will also protect you later after you have died in the bardo. Through practicing the deity, all ordinary grasping will diminish. Sometimes people also have other thoughts. They think that people are trying to harm me, people are casting spells on me, and they think that. So it may or may not be possible, but in any case, whenever you think maybe somebody is casting a spell on you, if you think of the deity, that thought diminishes. There is no self. So first of all, we must understand karma. And so if there is a karmic connection from a past lifetime, then we will be harmed. If there is no karmic connection, then even if that other being tries to harm us, they cannot harm us. So let's assume there is a karmic connection and someone is trying to harm us. How is that person trying to harm us? With a self-grasping mind. And the karmic connection is rooted in the self-grasping mind. So only if, as long as we hold on to the self, the karmic connection exists and we can be harmed. However, if we let go of the self and there is no self, there is no one to be harmed. So if you think about the Yidam deity and you just don't think about what this other person will do to you, just think of the deity, then there is no self. And if there is no self, there is no one to be harmed. And if they try to cause harm, that harm will just fall back onto themselves. For example, if there's someone who wants to harm you, cast a spell on you, and you see yourself as Tara, that spell cannot reach you. It will fall back onto themselves. So also the deity practice is very beneficial for these kind of things, like negative forces, spells, and so forth. And also it is very beneficial for illness, for example. When you're sick, then your mind goes there, and we create a sickness around the sickness. And sometimes even we create a sickness where there is no sickness. For example, we go to a doctor, and the doctor tells you, you are sick. And maybe that's not true. Maybe he's wrong, and you're not sick. But because he told you that, you believe it, and you begin to think about it and to worry about it. And then your mind goes there. And wherever your mind goes, your winds will go. And if your winds go there, your blood will go there. And if your blood goes there, you create the sickness. So really you're creating your own sickness in this way. And even if you have a sickness, if you have an actual illness, there is again a method to overcome it through deity practice. An instruction that was given by Lord Jigten Sumgön actually. And he said that when you have a sickness, you should visualize your Yidam deity, the size of an inch, in the nature of fire, at the particular place where you're sick. And just focus on that single-pointedly. And that really is very beneficial to help with sickness. Especially when you're sick, it is important not to think about the sickness. There is no benefit in thinking about it. Whatever arises, allow it to arise and do not grasp at it. Things exhaust themselves, just like hair or nails are growing. They exhaust themselves naturally. So do not grasp with your mind at the sickness. Then the deity practice can also benefit your sickness or any other kind of difficulty in this lifetime or in future lifetimes or the afflictive emotions. And so we have said before, we've talked about the king that takes on the kingdom. When one takes on a kingdom, that means one gains independence, full control over one's own happiness. the king has power over the entire country and has the power to create their own independence. And so in the same way, with the conventional bodhicitta, we receive the kingdom of being free from negative emotions when they arise. And when we achieve the kingdom of the ultimate bodhicitta, we see the nature of the mind, and that nature is unchanging. Once we have seen this nature and we abide within the unchanging ground, we naturally accomplish the dual purpose of others and self. For your own sake, you mount the royal seats of Dharmakaya, and for the sake of others, you display the two form emanations, the Rupa Kayas, that accomplish the welfare of sentient beings. So it is these two types of kingdom that we obtain.
다 sarva takpa choksa shuyore. Aja timba so, aja timba ji. Jesu nga sa ji nga yin sam, wo so kiri su yore. Tiri sami ke rangi chi ke mare. Muni ke tongda ke timba ke tani tiri sende shi yungbo de sa ta, asu senda sa ji. Gyuti pa tuman chanong tawa re. Pele zangso na ke loku drume de la. Loku ni yore la, loku ni yore. Loku tambo jeng so sama saje si pinga, riwa kip re. Nipa de ta, saje li jinpi longa, so dandi cha de yore ma re, nipa de yore ma re. Ta tengo sanchok sepi je de nipa de lep yore, de lep na. Sem le ju sang hin je de jewa kam, sa de ke sem musi cha de yore, tuman chanong tawa. 사도 난 제발 미바 라산이 랑라니 라서 유를 뭐 내게요 뭐 양유 뭐 똑그러면 제 주차도 전통 이제 소로 되고 사도 무슨 이제 디감이 다 가르치는 거죠. 오 생을 상문지 네 매발 이제 참말 계속 말이 끼나 찍걸 오 등기 깨고 나는 라래서 라래 이게 제격 발이 온다고 돼 맞더니 막 차지 요는 돈이 이제 손도 좀 봐봐도 요 말에 대신에 오 상한 것이 레상은 계름 싸고 마서 하정들이 귀ချုပ်나와래지 네 맞았디 바지 상스는 건 되게 맞대 하고 거래 조금 그렇더라 산도 기본으로 보지 뭐만 세서 나 이게 그 동작은 됐지.
So these were the first 2 points, the clarity and the recollection of purity. I gave a very brief introduction to that. And the third point is the divine pride of being the deity. And so normally then we are told, in that context, you must think, I actually am the deity. But then when we just think that I'm the deity, it's really sort of hard to really believe it. So we really must more understand what that means from an ultimate perspective. From an ultimate perspective, the mind of the deity and our own mind is exactly the same on the level of Buddha nature. We are connected like the beads on a mala string. Or for example, when you imagine two like electricity cables, and only when they meet then there's light. And so one of these cables alone will not make the light. And so one of these cables is Buddha nature that we have. And on that level we are the same as the Buddhas. And then the other cable, the other cord, is our intention. Either we give rise to self-grasping or an altruistic mind. If we give rise to an altruistic mind, then we have that second cable. Then the two cables connect and the light illuminates. And so in that way, we must understand when we cultivate bodhicitta, then we actually become the deity. From the perspective of Buddha nature, we already are connected to the deity. And if we give rise to bodhicitta, we actually become the deity. And then when we visualize the deity, again, we cannot always remain within this state, and again, afflictive emotions arise. So it is important to understand what really is the essence of the deity, more so than the visualization. The essence is the deity's mind, which is a union of emptiness and compassion. And if I give rise to utterly pure, undefiled love and compassion for just an instant, in that instant I am the actual deity. In that I must cultivate trust. So from an ultimate perspective, although there are hundreds and thousands of deities, there is not a single one who does not have the mind of emptiness and compassion. So within that union, they really are one. And if you cultivate this union, then you really are a deity. So it is not so important that you clearly visualize the deity. Whether your visualization is clear or not, it is most important that you accomplish the mind of the deity and cultivate that divine pride into the mind of the deity, the union of emptiness and compassion. So that point of deity practice is extremely important. And it seems to be an auspicious point to stop the teachings. So we stop here and dedicate the virtues.